Hello and welcome. So I'm here with my next roster review, and that will be for Donotj, who is part of the Pups with Lightsabers guild. This is, I think, quite a misleading page because they are in Carbonite, Executor, SWGOH, but that doesn't really paint the picture. They are actually an incredibly new account. I think at the time of submitting, 17 days, a little bit longer now since making the graphic and recording this video, but they are quite a big spender, and by their own admission I think they refer to themselves as a dolphin. So that opens up a lot of interesting routes and possibilities in terms of account planning and doing a roster review, because I think this would be very different to a light spender or free-to-play player, of course. So without further ado, let's hop into it. Right, so as mentioned, they said they're a pretty heavy spender, considers themselves a dolphin, but all of the Lightspeed bundles available in-game at the time, and have rushed to Executor within those 17 days. I don't know when exactly they unlocked it, but I'm sure they are very popular with the rest of their fleet shard, who are probably rocking at most like finalizer Lightspeed bundle fleets. So that's a pretty sensational start, and straight away getting that crystal income, and I imagine they'll be good for quite a few months until other players are able to get Executor and Profundity up and running. They are working on finishing off the GLs they got through the Lightspeed bundles. I've already had a quick look, and to be honest, they're pretty close to finishing off most of these teams. They're then moving on to Bo-Katan Mandalore, who I think they're also very close to finishing, and then Peridia Patrol to get that really good assault battle up and running. They're looking to see if this is the overall right direction, and possibly moving on to Profundity and sort of general bigger spender current advice, and who to put their first R10 on, which I think would be a very good question. And I think in terms of are they in the right direction, my guess is that what they've listed here is probably not going to take them that long at all to complete, because they are a fairly heavy spender. So I'll have a more broad of a look in terms of potential routes they could go down. So yeah, let's jump into a bit of a summary. Right, so as I mentioned, incredibly young account, 21 days, but already at 5 million, majority of which would be through the Lightspeed bundles, but also Executor. We'll be adding a lot of that, part of the Pups with Lightsabers guilds. And when I had a look at this, I was thinking, oh, that seems quite familiar to me, and that's because the guild I'm in my main account is part of sort of alliance, sort of focused on TW, and I think their parent guild, Dogs with Lightsabers, which would make sense, of course, is part of that. So yeah, so I think they're in let's say a junior guild with, I guess, potential to move up into that higher guild. But of course, I imagine they'll have lots of options in terms of guilds in no time at all. In terms of guild raid performance, 44 million, which I think is the fourth box. Personal raid score 500,000. Obviously, this isn't a huge amount in terms of Mark III currency, but they are just brand new, and to be honest, we'll probably find that they may outgrow their guilds pretty quickly. When they started 3 weeks ago, this might have been a very good guild, but already they're looking to be one of the bigger players, and yeah, I imagine their personal raid score as well will increase. There just hasn't been that much time, to be honest, in terms of their own personal performance. So Carbonite 4, and again, this is just a matter of time. I think they would have had at most 2 GACs, probably only 1, so they're going to be limited how fast they can climb up each month, because there's only 9 battles. I do expect they'd go pretty close to 9-0 at the start, as they start to climb into Bronzium and Chromium. Probably already this is at least a Chromium roster, maybe even a Rhodium, so I do expect that to go up pretty much every month. Fleet rank, they have Executor, so no surprises there. They are first, sort of securing that really good crystal income, and Colosseum rank, they said top 10, I just put first. And what that means is they get 1,000 era currency every day, which is pretty incredible stuff. That works out to, at a minimum, 30,000, but of course there's other events that I haven't factored into this calculation, such as the era battles, which they'll be getting, I think maybe around like 2,000 each era battle, so they can maybe add another 4,000 on top of this a month. And then also, of course, the rewards you get for adding overall era levels to the characters, they'll start to scale up as well. So at a minimum 30,000 a month, probably a little bit more. And what that means is they have pretty much complete flexibility in terms of buying Erodium Lightspeed tokens and taking characters up to relic level 5, and they can do this with pretty much any character that's over a year old, so that will let them sort of pick and choose sort of most farms in the game and get things done very quickly. And of course they'll even potentially have some left over to start thinking or to start using on Relic 10 if they wish. I would say this isn't really important. Relic 10 doesn't have that much of a performance advantage at the moment, but maybe it's something they'd want to save and apply later. Who knows when it will be a requirement. But yeah, pretty amazing stuff. In terms of assault battles, again, because the account is so new, I don't think they would actually have had a chance to take part in all of the assault battles. I think this is their estimate, or what they've done so far. Mostly CT2 or CT3. I think the only one that isn't possible, I mean I might be wrong in this, they maybe have done it with Tuscans, is the Fanatical Devotion one, because they would need Inquisitors and they don't yet have them, but we'll be getting Inquisitor Lightspeed tokens next month, so I imagine that will be up in no time. And yeah, I really wouldn't worry about the assault battles. I think just with the rate of progress in farming, they'll most likely like naturally cover these off as they go. There's probably no point in focusing on them like you would as a free-to-play player, where they'd be much more of an important part of your early game income. I'd say these would be less impactful for an account like this, but what they have done is invested in Duel of the Fates and have said they will do the same for Peridia Patrol up to R7, and to be honest, even pushing to R9 when they're able would be a good idea, just to get that return on investment going, and cause I would guess they would want to start pushing up into R8s and R9s, especially with Relic Delta and getting requirements for all the various GLs. So R9 for an account like this might be a bit of an idea. So obviously, because the account's only a few weeks old, they haven't yet done what I would have called the resource GLs, but I think these would be very good targets for an account like this, because what I see being the bottleneck, if you could call it that, for a heavier spender nowadays is things like mods, also Zetas, but there's not really any good Zeta event, you just need to buy those really. But mods could be a bit of a bottleneck, because they are just expanding they'll be able to expand their roster so quickly with Lightspeed tokens and era currency, to the point at which they'd want to supplement their mod materials as much as possible, and a way to do that would be for going for Jabba and Hondo quite early to get those smuggler run events. I think would be a very good idea. To a lesser extent, Ahsoka would be a good idea, just to, similar to these assault battles, get a good return on investment. I would say probably less crucial to a mod event for an account like this. And there's a few other advantages that I'll go into when I look into the roster for going for characters like Hondo and this quite early, which would definitely be a very different tactic to someone who is either a light spender or free to play. So let's hop on over to SWGOH.gg. Righto, so first I'll just jump into their collection. So as I mentioned, they have 3 GLs, I think all through the Lightspeed bundles. Looks like they were able to buy enough Zetas for them, which is quite impressive. I'd expect Zetas to be a bit of a bottleneck, but it looks like they were able to find enough packs to get those Zetas. Quite often it could be, even if you have all the money in the world, they can sometimes just be a real sparsity of good Zeta packs. So looks like they're able to take advantage of like the Christmas packs, that sort of thing, I would guess. So good sort of set of GLs, especially Supreme Leader Kylo Ren and Rey. The challenge they might have at the start is, I think, aside from Supreme Leader Kylo Ren, but I guess who does have Dark Side Rey, but she's less needed. She's really good, but maybe less crucial than the Conquest characters for Rey, because they'll have the teams that they get through the Lightspeed bundles, but they won't have the optimal team for Rey, just because she is really good with Ben Solo and also Ezra, who are both Conquest characters, and there's just going to be a bit of a natural block or wait for Conquest characters because they've only just started and can feasibly only do either easy or normal mode Conquest. So just even if they buy the Conquest Plus pass, which gives them 2 attempts at Proving Grounds and refreshes all of the attempts, which I think you can do twice on each, you would get, I think, 120 shards each time. So the fastest possible way you could unlock Conquest characters through Proving Grounds would, I think, be 3 months from the point that you unlock hard mode Proving Grounds, which might not even be for another month or so, because they might only be doing easy or normal mode depending on when they joined, because you have to progress through each of those to reach the harder tiers. So there's just going to be a bit of a wait to get Conquest characters. They do release Conquest characters in sort of individual Lightspeed bundles, which they have been purchasing, but that's a little bit, I guess, luck in terms of which one pops up. Of course, if a Ben Solo one pops up, an Ezra one probably won't because he's very new, but I guess you never know, then that'd definitely be, I'd say, worthwhile given the budget. Also things like Malgus and Fury class Interceptor for fleets like the Leviathan, I think they probably would have just missed those because they were in the game recently, but I imagine joined just after they were released. So yeah, Conquest characters is something to keep in mind as being a little bit of a blocker in terms of getting certain GLs and certain optimal teams, because if we just hop back on over to Resistance, they will, I guess, only be able to run with like JTR, BB-8 and maybe the Resistance Bros, which is good. It will definitely do the job in Carbonite and Bronzium, maybe even Chromium, but eventually you would want the optimal team. And Rey is really good, but nowadays her best team is usually not her requirement characters. Pretty much occasionally you might throw in Jedi training Rey, but even then she normally works with like unaligned Force users and various Jedi as well, so just want to have the optimal team straight away. So those are the GLs they have at the moment. So I'll go through potential options in terms of next ones to target, and I'm actually going to jump straight to the end level boss and talk about Pirate King Hondo, who's the most recent GL in the game. Only came out, I think, 4 or 5 months ago. So this might be a little bit against what you might expect, but I think there's a few reasons for looking into Pirate King Hondo as the first GL to actually farm and work on relicing characters, and I'll go into that. First of all, they do actually have a decent amount of progress just by the Lightspeed bundles they have purchased, like the Rey bundle. You've got Scavenger Rey, Veteran Smuggler, Ezra from the Shadows of the Empire, and then also I think these are from like the Finalizer and the C bundle, so already have 5 at relics. Other ones will be quite easy to pick up. General Kenobi is quite a straightforward farm and is part of a few Lightspeed bundles that might pop up. Turret, that would be a Rhodium Lightspeed token probably. And then Gas might be slightly more challenging, and I'll go through that in a second. But apart from that, Hondo as well, of course, a Rhodium Lightspeed token, would be the 6 new marquees, which aren't accelerated, so you would need to, I'd say, at least refresh those nodes. maybe even twice if you want to get this really quickly. But these would be good candidates just for working on in terms of farming and relicking quite quickly. And the reason for that is when you're willing to spend, and specifically when you're willing to spend on Lightspeed bundles, you can come across a little bit of, I don't know, Lightspeed bundle paralysis or indecision, in that at this point pretty much every team or character over, let's say, a year and a half, 2 years has a Lightspeed bundle that has been released at some point, and we just don't know when they'll be back. We can guess they'll probably be back May the 5th at the latest, but they will most likely appear at some point just randomly, seemingly. So for that reason, and for an account that's willing to spend, I think it makes actually a lot of sense to work on the recent stuff and also the brand new stuff, and then just pick up the Lightspeed bundles as they release, instead of working on the older stuff that would just be a Lightspeed bundle that you'd be happy to purchase anyway. Of course, you're not going to be able to avoid that completely, just because most things have a Lightspeed bundle, so there will be things that you'll want to work on, and there's probably no point in waiting for a Lightspeed bundle to come up. But I think when you can, I think it's quite a good idea to focus on the newer stuff. So that is stuff that's been released in the last year or so, like Pirate King Hondo, but also the new releases, which is maybe now less relevant with the era system, but I think that this player has been investing in the new era units, so I think it makes sense to work on teams around those as well, even though they might not actually have to put relics on them if they get them to level 95 by then. But yeah, so I think that's one of the reasons it makes sense to go straight for Pirate King Hondo. There are two others. The second I've already mentioned is Smuggler's Run 3, is the better of the mod events, and I think mods may be slightly more of a bottleneck because you're able to expand your roster so quickly. I think it makes sense to prioritize those resource events over things that would maybe give you more relics or gear, which might not be so much of an issue. And the final thing is that he is currently in the featured raid at the moment, and I wouldn't recommend this for most players, because by the time they finish farming, someone like Hondo or any new team for the raid, we might be quite close to the end of this raid, which I think we have at least 6 months left of it, might be a little bit longer. But I suspect the rate at which an account like this is able to farm new characters, they'd be able to farm it quickly enough to still make it worthwhile and sort of improve their raid score, and then potentially with that improved raid score maybe look at joining a guild, sort of pushing higher in the raid and sort of increasing that Mark 3 income. So I think Pirate King Hondo would be great overall to avoid sort of Lightspeed bundle paralysis, to increase mods, and also to work on a sort of new and really useful raid team. There are other raid teams you could work on, but I think in terms of longevity, I think it makes sense to go for the GL, because the other teams like Jedi Master Mace aren't as good. Bit disappointing, to be honest. And also he only releases like once every 3 months, and GLs are permanently in the journey guide, so you might be a bit restricted in terms of when you can unlock him anyway. So definitely makes sense. Well, I'd say definitely. It would be a bit of an investment, so is a good option, I would say. I'm now going to jump over to General Skywalker, who is a requirement. Yeah, so General Skywalker is really the only, I would say, tricky farm. There are no conquest characters as part of the requirements for Pirate King Hondo, and also he doesn't actually need conquest characters in his team like others like Rey. SM33 is designed for Pirate King Hondo, but you can definitely make use of original Hondo instead, and some would argue he might even be better in that team anyway. So that's another, I guess that would be the fourth reason to go for Pirate King Hondo, is he's not reliant on conquest characters, which is a very good thing. And then also, so General Skywalker, you already have good progress in terms of a few Jedi, so the event is split into the sort of light side and dark side. C-3PO would just be a case of maybe, I think you'd want to farm C-3PO anyway for things like Jabba and JML, but you'd essentially be able to relic one Ewok with a Rhodium Lightspeed token. I'd recommend Nisa, and then just pick up the other Ewoks. There are Ewok Lightspeed bundles, maybe something like that will pop up. So is a pretty straightforward farm, to be honest, especially with Lightspeed bundles and Lightspeed tokens. Separatists, I'd maybe recommend working on Asajj Ventress up to relics, and with Relic Delta should be able to carry the team. She is I think the only requirement here, and she's a requirement for GL Ahsoka. The other ones, you could just stick Carbonite Lightspeed tokens on them. I guess if you wanted to, you could stick Rhodium Lightspeed tokens if you're getting one every 5 days. It's probably not too much of an issue, but the minimum, you could just get them up to gear 12. They're not too difficult farms, I don't think. Droidic and B1 might take a little bit longer, but you should be able to do quite quickly. So I think getting Gas is good because he leads into Pirate King Hondo, but also Ahsoka and Lord Vader, so he's quite a pivotal farm and quite a good one to get up and running early, so you can do those. So yeah, that's the Pirate King Hondo farm. I'll then move on over to another new team, and that is GL Ahsoka. So this is similar to Hondo in that is a newer team and doesn't have a Lightspeed bundle. Could potentially have a Lightspeed bundle at some point, technically next year as I'm recording but this year as the video will be released. The only blocker to GL Ahsoka is Commander Ahsoka Tano, who is a conquest character but does appear in Lightspeed bundles, so might be one to work on in the future. And another good thing about this farm is you're already indicating that you're looking to work on these 3 Night Troopers. If you do go for the Pirate King Hondo route, you will have General Skywalker and Asajj Ventress, and then it would just be a case of Rhodium Lightspeed tokens on the newer stuff who are now available because they're over a year old. So pretty straightforward farm for an account like this, I would say, and advantage being it isn't a current Lightspeed bundle and also has our economy event, and quite a good one as well. So I think it would make sense to go for Ahsoka pretty early, and I think overall fits the strategy of going for new stuff, filling in the older stuff through Lightspeed bundles. I think is generally quite a good approach, even for lower spenders, but definitely for higher spenders as well. So let's move on to a few other options. So I'm going to quickly discuss Leia. Leia, just in terms of all-round power, I would say she has an economy event. It isn't that good, but she is often seen as the best GL in the game. That might vary, but definitely one of the best GLs in the game, and is quite a straightforward farm. Doesn't need any conquest characters, doesn't need any conquest characters for her team either, and it would just be, the difficulty would be Rebel Officer Leia, who you need to farm with GE2, but again, I would guess you probably don't need that currency for things like Kyrotech and gear, so you're probably fine using that, and maybe even Mark II, to be honest, if you need to, and getting Rolo, as she's called, up and running. And the other ones would just be, you could wait for Lightspeed tokens. A lot of these will be coming in February and March next year, I think, with one for Bounty Hunters being the last one, so you could wait for those, and then also pick up ones with the near infinite supply of era currency you have for Rhodium Lightspeed tokens, things like Nisa and Scout Trooper as well. So I think would be actually quite a straightforward farm for an account like this, and a really good character. And that would lead in nicely to the next one, and that is Jabba, and he covers the other mod economy event I mentioned. And again, I think those would be more valuable to you than maybe some others, just in terms of getting on top of the modding for what would be a very quickly growing account. The difficult things to look out for would be Jedi Knight Luke Skywalker, similar to Rolo, but he also needs Wampa and Hermit Yoda, and Rolo as well, which are slightly difficult farms. Just because you can't farm them outright, but you can use Erodium Lightspeed tokens on Hermit Yoda and Wampa, I believe, so should be fine. There's also a Lightspeed bundle. I mean, there's a Lightspeed bundle for pretty much everything for those characters, but we don't know when that's going to pop up. And there's also a Lightspeed bundle for Jabba as a whole, and also for Leia, I should have mentioned. But I guess to a certain extent, everything's going to have a Lightspeed bundle, so in terms of planning and farming, it's going to be difficult to take that into account, apart from the very new stuff like Pirate King Hondo. Everything else is pretty straightforward: tokens, relic farming, that sort of thing. A few Lightspeed tokens will apply that come out in March. Fennec Shand, Bausch from the Rebel farm, Chrysanthemum, I guess you would then have to use an Erodium Lightspeed token on him. So yeah, pretty good, but the most important thing would be the mod event. In terms of other options, so Jedi Master Luke, he would essentially be the free option once you've already worked on Jabba and Leia. I think you will pretty much just have him, because you would have C-3PO. I think Han and Chewie are needed for a mixture of Jabba and Jedi Knight Luke, R2-D2. You will just have him. So this is just like almost a buy one get one free. You've already got most of his requirements from Lightspeed bundles, Rebel Y-Wing, so this would be a very much a 2 for the price of 1 GL, which would be good. And oh yes, I think you did actually buy the Jedi Master Luke Allies bundle, I forget what it's called, which is why it's pretty much done, to be honest. So definitely one either just focusing on directly, or looking at Leia and Jabba first and then picking him up straight afterwards. And I would say that because he's definitely slightly lower tier in terms of overall power, doesn't have an economy event, would be good with Jedi Knight Cal Kestis if you do focus on him for territory battle special missions. So I'd maybe line it up to get those two at the same time, but yeah, you would essentially just inherit JML. I'll now move on to ships. So you mentioned looking to work on profundity, and I think this is a good option. I am a fan in general of working on these legendary ships as early as possible, just to build up the shards over time. Of course, if you are spending, you might want to get them straight to 7 stars, but I would say that's probably not necessary unless, I don't know, Leviathans pop up in the fleet shard or something like that. But definitely worthwhile, and having both Executor and Profundity will really accelerate you up through GAC, which I don't think would be a problem anyway. But having both of those, and also by working on Profundity, you will get, I guess, another 2 for the price of 1, in that you will have most of what you need for a decent Home 1 fleet. With the B-Wing, you already have Captain Drogon, you already have Cal Katarn from the Starkiller farm, I believe. So you have pretty much all that you need for a good Home 1 fleet, which even in Kyber 1 is a very viable fleet, and especially as you move up, having that extra fleet will be very useful as well. Won't be needed for Fleet Arena, of course, but will be nice to have. And Profundity is a pretty straightforward farm. The only thing potentially holding it up is Bistan's U-Wing, which you can only farm with Guild Event 1 and Fleet Shards. Fleet currency doesn't appear that often. There are like money packs, and I think there is an overall Profundity Lightspeed bundle, it goes without saying. But you're so I guess close to it already. It's really not that much of a difficult farm. You only have 4 relic characters to do, which if you're getting an Erodium Lightspeed token, or if you could get an Erodium Lightspeed token every 5 days, it's really not much of a stretch. The only thing might be the ships that might slow things down slightly. Again, you can accelerate those through crystals, that sort of thing, but I would say you're obviously set in terms of Fleet Arena for now, so wouldn't be 100% necessary to rush if you don't want to. So yeah, Profundity, a great option. The other ship is Leviathan. So this one, again, because you're set in terms of fleet arena, of course isn't 100% necessary, but I imagine it's something you'll want to work on at some point, more so for like GAC performance. Having all of the GL ships up and running is really almost needed for the higher ends of Kyber. And also, as players in your shard start unlocking like Executors and Profundity, you might want to one up them again, potentially, with the better fleet in Leviathan, who would make your life easier in terms of climbing. Somehow in my main account, which is nearly 3 years old, I have found myself in a fleet shard with only one other Leviathan, and I can tell you that climbing is pretty is pretty straightforward and nice, to be honest. I don't know how I've been so lucky with that. I don't think that's normally the case, but having that Leviathan would be a nice luxury. It does give you a decent Sith Empire team as well to throw into GAC, and you would want this fleet anyway, so it might be a nice thing to work on in the background while you focus on your other GLs and economy events. The thing slowing this one down will be the Fury class Interceptor and Malgus, who is the pilot. You've unfortunately just missed their Lightspeed bundles, so we don't know when those are going to be back, because they are conquest farms. So that is why Leviathan might not make sense straight away, just because you're going to be blocked a little bit by those conquest units, but might make sense to sort of slow farm, fast farm, whatever you want to do, the Sith ships that might take a while, and start working on like Darth Revan and Darth Malak. There are Lightspeed bundles for their requirements, but the other good thing about Leviathan is there's currently no Lightspeed bundle for the fleet as a whole, which means it's another one of your not like double counting or overlapping with Lightspeed bundles that could come out in the future. So might be a nice option at some point. Ooh, okay, so let's move back into the count as a whole. That's I guess the GLs and farms that I think might be worth keeping in mind. I'll pull those together in a little bit of like a suggested plan at the end of the video. But in terms of other bits and pieces, so I did want to just quickly actually look at the new era units that you said you have been working on. So all era units, I imagine. Okay, so yep, I think Asajj literally came out yesterday as I'm sort of finishing this video. So looks like we're getting up to 75, which I think is relics, which I imagine you're on track to unlock Spider Legs Maul. So it might be worth, of course, sort of factoring in the various teams that these will be a part of. IG-90 will be part of the Afra team. That I would probably just suggest waiting for the Afra bundle to pop up at some point and just inserting him in there. Asajj, there is a bounty hunter Boba Fett, Scion of Django, who is a conquest character, so again might be worth waiting on that. Darth Vader I think would be one of the main priorities, because you will already have Mara Jade and Sith Eternal, not Sith Eternal, normal Papa Palps, Emperor Palpatine. Inquisitor Barriss, I'm less sure. I think she'll fit into some like secondary Inquisitor team, less of a priority. Same with these two. Stormtrooper Luke, I think you're better off just working on Leia. His team, I think, is meant to be a sort of intermediate stage before getting Leia. Might be good in 3v3s. Yoda and Chewie, I have no idea. To be honest, how good that Wookiee team will definitely be a bit of a side farm. So yeah, that's good to know. And also Spider Legs Maul, I imagine you're just going to be getting at relics, so no farming required. Unfortunately, I think you're just past the Stranger being the active conquest unit, but I imagine you can make some form of Starkiller team even without the Stranger that includes Spider Legs Maul, so that is all cool. Okay, so I did just want to have a quick look. So I think we'll look at Bo-Katan Mandalore. I think you're pretty much there. Got the Lightspeed bundle, got Kelleran Beck, maybe from the Lightspeed token. I'm not sure. If we sort by Mandalorian, have you unlocked Bo-Katan Mandalore at this time? Not quite yet, but I imagine you're pretty much on the verge of doing so. So there's not really much to go on there. I think you have the farm complete. The other thing, so that is a GAC team, and would also help in terms of a guild team that certain guilds might be interested in. If you have Bo-Katan Mandalore for the territory battle mission, the other one would be Jedi Knight Cal Kestis. So I think if we first of all look at unaligned force users, because you have Malicos, so I think are working on that team. You have him, you have Serjunda, Cal Kestis up and running already, maybe from the Lightspeed tokens. So that's 2 of the Jedi Knight Cal Kestis. So you have the Malicos team as well, which is fantastic. The other ones would be, I think, so it would just be Merrin, you would need, and I think Tarfo. So that might be a nice sort of a thing to work on. Maybe once you unlock Jedi Master Look, it'd be nice to have Jedi Knight Cal Kestis up and running as well. And then another thing is, you asked about sort of R10 and what would be the best R10 to place. I think if you were to place one, and I in general an advocate of waiting and hoarding, but I think as you're doing so well in Colosseum, it probably applies less, just because you'll be able to make up the materials so quickly to apply more R10s. So in terms of what to apply the free one on, I think Rey would probably make the most sense out of the available characters. She does sort of damage based on health and I think relic levels as well in one of her abilities. I can't quite remember which one. So having an R10 I think would be fantastic. You don't quite have her optimal team just yet, just because of the whole conquest character thing, but I guess having her at R10 might make up a little bit for that, and especially in like below Kyber Grand Arena, I think even just having an R10 Rey could be relatively deadly, and you'll unlock those conquest characters soon, I'm sure anyway. So I think R10 Rey. Supreme Leader Kylo Ren would be a decent option. Sith Eternal I would avoid. I know he benefits a bit from more health and survivability, but just really isn't on the same level as the other two. So out of the available ones, I think definitely Rey. Okay, so I'm just gonna have a quick look over the other characters. I think we've covered most by going through all of the requirements. You've got the Malicos team, you have Wampa already, so that covers off the Jedi Knight Look farm or part of it, and of course will be good in GAC. Not that you'll be lacking for teams. That's a lot of options so far. I don't think there's anything really standing out to me. Maybe other useful things to look at could be like the Great Mothers. Again, not a Lightspeed bundle team. Balin, who their requirement for isn't, so you already have Thrawn there, and you're farming the Peridia Patrol boys, so having Great Mothers that you can put them into her team would be really good, really great, and will help with assault battle. Not a huge concern, but I think might be maybe a good side project. In terms of other stuff I wanted to quickly look at, so mods. So already, even 20 days, you've got loads of 25 plus speed mods, or a decent amount, especially considering the time, so definitely investing in there. But I think would still be the thing to focus on in terms of like getting Hondo Jabba. In terms of your guild, so pups with lightsabers, decently sized. I imagine they're quite active and focused guild. You're doing the raids every 7-ish days on average, which is decent. Of course, I think you will unfortunately start to outgrow guild this size quite quickly, just due to the spending. And I think another good general strategy for a new big spender would be to focus on the new raid when that comes out, because that will make use of mostly new teams, which you'll get through the era system now mostly. So just by doing that, you'll already have quite a big score. But I think it would make sense to go all in on whatever the new raid is whenever that comes out, maybe in 6 months, maybe a bit longer. And at that point really look at your guild situation and what guild you can get into, because I think having a big score in the raid is always most valuable at the start of the raid, and is what a lot of guilds would be looking for. If you're able to contribute near max or well above average, I think that would be very attractive for guilds looking to recruit, that sort of thing. So I think whenever the requirements come out for the new raid, I think it would make sense for an account like this to really focus on doing as well as possible in whatever that is. So I think that is it in terms of the account. I'm just going to put that together in a little bit of a plan, a suggestion really. So let's go over to that. Right, okay, so this is only a suggestion, of course, and I think it will be more difficult for this account than most to work on like a very concrete plan, just because I think things will be so fluid with the rate at which you're able to progress. But also I imagine you will be wanting to pick up new lightspeed bundles when they come out. So of course things not on this plan or things that are further down the line might just appear in a lightspeed bundle that will move and shake things around. So this is just given the information we have at the moment, what would be a decent plan, but I think things can and will change. But in terms of the short term, I think the first three would definitely be a good option. So finishing up what you're already working on, which is Bo-Katan, Taron Malicos, which you're pretty much there with both of them, and also the Peridia Patrols. I think you mentioned that would definitely be very good just to get a return on investment very early on and leads on to other things later on. Then I think in terms of where you're spending your resources, where you're actually farming, I think Hondo makes a lot of sense just because, again, he's not a lightspeed bundle. So it would make sense to work on him and then pick up lightspeed bundles as they start to drop and sort of fill in from behind essentially while working on the new stuff. And at the moment, the new stuff is Pirate King Hondo, and we'll give you that mod event. We'll give you one really good team in the raid at R9 if you take them there, and then also you could use the other requirements to get like a 1.2, maybe 1.8, but it'd be difficult without Maz, who was a conquest character. So you'd be getting, let's say, about 5 million from the raid, and you could potentially do that quite quickly, which could help in terms of guild stuff and Mark III income. And I think even ignoring the raid, you would want him for the mod event, so I think would be a very good option. Then you did mention Profundity, and I think that makes sense to work on eventually, maybe not straight away. There will probably be ways of like buying shards for the ships, but just in terms of overall like efficiency, I think it's just, you wouldn't need Profundity straight away because you already have Executor. So it makes sense to fit that in a little while, work on the ships, maybe accelerate it a little bit, but when you unlock Profundity you should also have Home 1, and that will really sort of solidify your fleet game as well. Then I think the last three I would say would be very fluid and interchangeable depending on when things come out, especially lightspeed bundles. I think it would make sense to work on Leia. There will be lightspeed tokens that you could use if you want to be hyper efficient as part of those farms, and is also doesn't require any conquest characters, is a lightspeed bundle, so that might come out, but I think that's just a decision you have to make in terms of how much are you going to wait for lightspeed bundles, or are you fine just farming teams using era currency and Erodium lightspeed tokens, and it doesn't really matter too much. So Leia could definitely be an option. And I think also another nice new team to work on that again sort of saves from working on potentially lightspeed bundle teams could be the Great Mothers, but then also you would be quite close to Balin at that point, who isn't vital, is more of a nice to have. I would say this isn't crucial, but might be a nice team to really sort of fill out that GAC roster. Not that you'll need it, I don't think, but I think that could be a good option. And then I think it would make sense to really go for Jabba. I put him a little bit later, again just on the off chance his lightspeed bundle drops at some point. You might want to move him up if you really want to prioritize mods and are just going to bite the bullet and relic his requirements with Erodium lightspeed tokens. And also he has a few there's a few anniversary Lightspeed tokens that feed into his farm, so if you wait a few months, you'll be able to get those for free essentially. But again, that's all optional. But yeah, Jab Out would definitely be my second priority next to Hondo in terms of resource events. And as I mentioned, if you work on Jab Out, you will just have JML for free essentially. And I've stuck in a wee wild card of Jedi Knight Calcastus if you really want to elevate your JML team. He's still not one of the better GLs even with him, but would definitely improve things, and you can use him in territory battles, and together with Bo-Katan, Mandalore, you're really sort of solidifying your guild contribution and potential attractiveness to other guilds. And then finally, I think GL Ahsoka is a really good target. I put her later just because of the issue with the conquest characters, but without that I may even suggest her sooner. Again, new character, you already have a lot of her requirements, and the other ones you can now get with her Rhodium Lightspeed tokens, and has an economy event. So yeah, I've really focused on the return on investment and the newer characters for this one, but I think Ahsoka could be a very good option. Oh, and of course I should mention that as soon as the requirements for the new raid come out, I would suggest really focusing on that, no matter where you are in terms of this, or maybe you're past this already, I'm not sure. But I do think for an account like this, going hard on the new content and the new raid would be the most beneficial overall. So yeah, that finally takes me to the end. I think this has been quite a long one, but I think that's because there's so many different paths for an account like this. There's sort of different things to go down and a lot of options. So yeah, I've enjoyed looking at this one. Let me know what you think, and thanks for letting me have a look at it and do a roster review. So thank you very much, and I'll see you next time.